are students that are first generation in the career world. So just some housekeeping rules before we get started. The session is going to be recorded, so please make sure you're muted. And please fill out the check-in form if you haven't already. And if you haven't already, you can go ahead and check out the chat box. The link will be there. And if you do have any questions during our session, please submit them in the chat box so we can answer those for you. Okay. So let me introduce myself. My name is Angelica Tran. I am the Assistant Director for the SSS TRIO program here at San Jose State. And I am just so excited to welcome all of you today. So thank you for joining us. And I will go ahead and let my colleagues introduce themselves, starting with Lauren.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lauren Flores, she, her, hers pronouns. I am the Guardian Scholars Coordinator here at San Jose State, and that means that I support our first generation students who are part of EOP, who also identify as current and former foster youth, wards of the court, unaccompanied homeless youth, and youth under legal guardianship. And I will pass it off to my teammate, Angelica.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. So excited to have you all join us today. Again, my name is Angelica Gomez, and I'm one of the EOP academic advisors here at San Jose State. And I'll pass it on to Matt.
Thank you. Happy Tuesday, folks. Thanks for spending your lunchtime with us. Again, my name is Matthew Stowe. I'm the Director of Mason Student Programs. I see a lot of MEP folks in the house, so shout out. Thanks for representing y'all. Yeah, excited to really have this panelist for you all, and that's going to allow me to introduce our very own moderator from MEP. She's a graduating senior doing chemical engineering, and I'm going to pass it over to Kathy Tong.
Thanks, Matt. You basically introduced myself for me, so thanks for that. And saved me a couple of seconds of air. Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here to be a moderator for you all. So with that, I'd like to shift gears a little bit and introduce our panelists. So if we can go on to the next slide. So our panelists one by one can introduce their name, their pronouns, their major and their minor, what job they currently work at in the company, and just a little bit about what they do before we get started and get into the questions and stuff.
Hi, everyone. My name is Iriana Zavala. I'm a former EOP alumni. I currently work at Evergreen Valley College at the Admissions and Records Office. My pronouns are she, her, hers. As I mentioned, I am the Admissions and Records Assistant, and what I do in my role right now is I like to consider myself the glue of the office. Whenever there's anything that's missing or anything that needs to be done within the admissions process for a student, I always go in there and make sure everything's fine, their applications. I'm also involved with graduation petitions. So those who are looking forward to transfer to four-year universities, I'm also in that heavily involved in that process as well.
Hey everyone, my name is Ivan Aguirre. I'm a library manager here at Norco Library in SoCal. I'm an alumni from TRIO, and I am actually currently in a master's program for my master's in library and information science. Graduated with a psychology bachelor's. So yeah, hope to talk to you guys more about that in my journey, and I'll pass it on to Cindy.
Hi everyone, my name is Cindy. My pronouns are her, she, her, hers, and I just graduated this May from SJSU. I majored in software engineering and I had no minor. I work at Nike and I just started a few weeks ago, so I'm still getting new into my team. I work for the operations and logistics team, which is basically like the team that builds like Nike's internal tools. So nothing that you guys see, but just like helping our employees.
All right, thank you to our panelists for answering the introductions. I'm really happy to jump into the first question. So Iriana, I'm going to start off with you for the first question. So while you were in college, how did you go about figuring out what major and or career you wanted to pursue, and what guidance or support did you utilize to figure out those two big questions?
Yeah, so I come from a small agricultural town in Northern California. And I remember visiting SJSU as a junior, and they really hammered in how it's Silicon Valley, there's a lot of startups, there's a lot of tech. And I was looking at the major list and I decided to just go with advertising. I thought it'd be interesting. While I was in the major though, I really enjoyed my classes, but I had the struggle of finding out sooner rather than later that I was in the wrong major. I was like, I don't know if I want to do this for the rest of my life. I don't know if I want to pursue a career in advertising. It was really difficult for me. And the reason why was because I was so heavily involved on campus. I worked at EOP. I was an EOP student. I was an academic mentor for the Summer Bridge program. I was involved in Greek life. I was an orientation leader. I was also involved in other clubs on campus. And so being a part of different communities and being able to be a resource for my peers really influenced the career that I'm in now, which is education and specifically higher ed. I really relied on my mentors. Shout out to Teresa and Matthew. They were really helpful in my, in my journey, trying to figure out that higher ed was for me.
Thank you so much, Adriana. And Ivan, I'm actually throwing you the same question as well. While in college, how did you go about figuring out what major and career you want to pursue, and what guidance or support did you utilize?
So for me, it's been kind of a winding road. Started in community college down here in SoCal, and then a transfer to San Jose State. So a lot of my higher education has been thinking I've gotten to the end, it's to the top of the mountain, just to find out that there's a bigger mountain to climb. So I took and retook a bunch of work and career aptitude tests, and really the biggest thing I found out was I didn't know what I wanted to be, and these tests kept telling me that I should be an astronaut, lawyer, artist for some reason. So right around that time is when I discovered TRIO, and I kind of sought them out. And through TRIO, if you're not familiar, it's for first-gen low-income students. A lot of the staff there and the advisors there, I kind of started looking up to them and I wanted to emulate them. So I was like, well, maybe I should be like a counselor of sorts, right? So I decided, oh, psychology. But then, I always had these other passions for other things like art and writing. And it kind of came down to that line of well, what's my degree actually going to do for me in the long run if I choose one of those other paths? And I think that's when I started discovering the idea of scope and having a degree work for you instead of it working you. So for me, it's which degree gave me the most options, because I don't come from a wealthy or privileged background. So for me, this was my shot. This is my only shot. So I had to make it count. So the way I went about choosing was, well, this will give me the most options. And the support that I got was in people telling me that it's okay to not know and to be able to choose a field that will give me more options instead of having to, follow the path that I think a lot of us first gens go through, where it's like, well, you should be this because this will get you the most amount of money, or you should be this because this is what we know. So really my support was just having someone say, it's okay to explore. Like, you're young, you're going to be okay. And just hearing that I'm going to be okay was how I ended up choosing my path. And yeah, and to this day, I still have, winding road, because I went from psychology to a master's in library information science, which is a little unorthodox. But yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Ivan. And Cindy, I'll have you wrap up the first question before we transition.
Yeah, so for me, I joined in SJSU as software engineering, and I had an idea that that's kind of what I wanted to do, because I had done a summer program in high school and they exposed us to computer science, and I knew that there wasn't that many girls and there wasn't that many Latinas. So I knew that I wanted to make a difference there. I didn't really know entirely still what the major was, but I went ahead and I applied and I got in as that. And then after a few CS classes, I knew that it may have not been for me. It was really hard, and I didn't know if it was to the point where I liked it. Felt like it was just, I couldn't do it. And I just had this mentality. But I knew that I wanted to do engineering for sure. So I remember I joined MEP and I joined SOLES, the Society of Latino Engineers and Scientists. And I spoke to my community, and then they had networking events. So I was able to see what other fields there are in engineering and what else are people doing in those fields. So kind of get a little understanding of what software engineering is, what I could do with that major. And that helped me really understand like what it is that I wanted to do. I had taken a mechanical engineering class. I remember I even filled out the application to switch at some point, but once I was able to network with more students and more professionals and see where this career can take you is what helped me decide. So definitely take advantage of all of the opportunities on campus.
Thank you so much, Cindy. And Iriana, I'm going to throw the next question right back to you now. So a lot of first-gen students, and I know I struggle with this myself as also a first-gen student, but we struggle with something called imposter syndrome. Now, to what extent we are familiar, not familiar with that term, it's a feeling of self-doubt as if you don't belong. So can you share with the audience how you navigated through this experience and just share some insight into like how you kind of went through it and endured it and everything?
Yeah, so I would say that I felt like this almost every day during my freshman year. I came here as a freshman back in 2016. And of course, the first person out of my whole family. I remember I had no financial aid that year because I had filled out my DREAM Act application wrong for financial aid. And that was already discouraging right before I came. So I felt like I was questioning myself a lot and trying to figure out, like, is this really for me? Is this what I should be doing? Is it because I want to, or is it because my family wants me to do this? But I reflected a lot, and I knew that this was something that I wanted to do to pursue my education because no one can take away my education. What I ended up doing was like I mentioned, I got really heavily involved on campus, and I really looked for support with other peers, specifically EOP. And I've said this plenty of times before, but I'll say it again. If it wasn't for EOP, I don't think I would have finished my bachelor's degree. I don't think I would have had that sense of community and that sense of belonging, because every single person that I spoke to, whether it was the pro staff, the professional staff at EOP, or if it was students that were also in the program, every single person that I spoke to shared that feeling of, is this really for me? Do I go through this? Am I an imposter in the system? Is the system really made for someone like me? And knowing that as a collective force, we're all there, we're all trying to go against all odds, that's something that really pushed me into completing my bachelor's degree.
Thank you so much, Adriana. Ivan, back to you about your insight experience with imposter syndrome and how you navigated through that. Sure.
So for me, the imposter syndrome is one of those things that I've struggled with a lot. And I've kind of had a lot of inner conflict with that term, especially because recently I've come to realize that a lot of the spaces that we inhabit and that we come to inhabit aren't really built for us, right? I'm Mexican American, I'm Chicano, and I'm the first in my family to do it, right? I'm the son of immigrants. Like all my life, I've been told that I don't belong and that my parents don't belong, that my family doesn't belong. So I think in that, I realized like, oh, I'm not truly an imposter. You're making me to be an imposter. And I think there's an importance in realizing that and knowing that the space you're in isn't really built for you. And something that I've used to navigate that is just kind of saying the hell with it. Like, I belong here. You know, you can't really tell me that I don't. Even if I don't feel comfortable here, that doesn't mean that I don't belong here. And once you reach a sense or a position of like some modicum of power, then you can start building the space for people, right? Because like as a manager here now, I've started building that space. It's been hard, and I've been, a lot of racist rhetoric towards my way, but that's part of being that first gen. And it's part of the weight that we carry, I think. But I think what helped me in my undergrad was finding a place in TRIO, because all the advisors that I've ever met in the TRIO programs have been people like me, first gen, underprivileged people. And I think in that they gave me hope Because if they can find a space in this world that's telling me that I don't have a space, like, then I should also find a space, or I should be able to make that space. And yeah, that's just kind of what I have to say about that.
Thank you so much for sharing. And then Cindy, we're gonna have you wrap it up.
Yeah, so same thing as well. I always felt like I had that, especially like my first 2 years in college. And then being first generation doesn't help because you already feel like you don't belong. You already feel like the odd one out. And it really took time for me to understand that like we're here because we deserve it and not because we got lucky. And I always had that mentality like, I just got lucky for this internship. I just got lucky to get into the major. Instead of knowing that, you know, we're here because we deserve it. Someone believed in us. Someone decided to choose us out of other candidates. So we're here for a reason. We deserve it. So for me, really like what helped me get around that is just like reminding myself that like we can do it. We stay motivated, surround yourself with people who support you as well in the community, and know that you are here because you earned it and you deserved it. Praise like the small little victories, because it's so easy to be doing really well in a class and then you don't do well in an exam, and then you just bring yourself down and you already feel like I'm not supposed to be here or I'm doing something wrong, when you know you have to praise the little victories as well. So just constantly reminding yourself that, and really bring people in your community that can support you and can remind you of those things as well. And that's when MEP played a really important role for me. I was like, I didn't feel like I belonged to the community. And then MEP really brought me into that community and made me feel like I belonged. I was a peer advisor for 3 years with Kathy. I knew Kathy for so long. So it really like formed that community for me and made me feel like there's other people out there that feel like they are in my position. So knowing that you're not alone and that you can do it, help me get through that. But there's still times when you feel like that, especially like even early in your career still. So
Thank you so much. All right, back to you, Iriana. I'm going to ask you the next question. So this is in regards to while you were still pursuing your degree in your current career, what other challenges and obstacles did you have to overcome, and what strategies and resources did you utilize to overcome those specific obstacles?
Yeah, so I'm very comfortable in this space. So I'm a DACA recipient, an AB 540, dreamer, whatever you want to call it. And in this particular situation that I'm in, it was extremely difficult for me to pay for school. You know, FAFSA, I don't qualify for FAFSA. I filled out my California Dream Act, which is state grants. It would be FAFSA, but through the California state. I did that wrong my first year. So trying to figure all of that out, along with like room and board, just living in San Jose being really expensive. I failed to realize that San Jose is an expensive city. Paying for school, and also just living with the uncertainty behind the program. Through the 4 years I was in college, we were under Trump's presidency. And so not knowing what my future will hold, having a lot of like anxiety of, okay, I'm here because, you know, I deserve to be here, just like Cindy mentioned, having all of this like community, all these people that are rooting for me, but also knowing that my future specifically is very uncertain, because I could get my 4-year degree and then the government could just decide to get rid of the program. So that was tough for me. It's still something that I kind of go through even as a professional, knowing that I'm in this specific situation and I'm now in my career, and it's still uncertain at times. And so figuring out, you know, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do when this happens? If it happens, if they get rid of it. In this specific situation, I relied a lot on my mentors and other peers who were in this specific situation as I was. And I just remembered that regardless of this challenge, you know, no one can take away my education. I know that there was a point back in like 2018 when I was getting ready to just quit school, start working as much as I could so I could save up just in case, you know, I wasn't able to work with my work permit. And Teresa de la Cruz, the EOP director, she talked me out of leaving school. And I remember her words, and she said, no one can take away your education. Like, continue, move forward. Like, you're here for a reason. And yeah.
Thank you so much. And with that, Ivan, I'll pass you the same question as well.
Okay, so I guess some of the challenges and obstacles I've faced have also been financial in nature and also just like mental health wise. The financial aspect, right? I'm first gen. I've said it before, I'm not from a wealthy family. So for me to move from SoCal to NorCal, just to try and experience something different, came with it, I think, that financial burden and that sense of a little bit of shame, where it's kind of like, well, do I really deserve to be doing everything that I'm doing here when I know that like my family could be using this money for something else? And I think the biggest obstacle was just myself most of the time. And the way that I kind of overcame that, as far as like finding resources for financial aspects of it, you know, I applied to grants, scholarships, and it was just really a matter of like believing that I could and having people believe in me. So like, for example, Angelica Tran right now, she was my mentor while I was at San Jose State in the TRIO program. And we had long conversations about me trying to study abroad. And if it wasn't for her, I don't think I would have gone for it, because it was one of those things where it's like, this is an extravagance, right? We're in higher education and we're constantly told to take advantage of every opportunity we get, but sometimes those opportunities come at a cost. And we weigh that on ourselves, right? And our families. Because like, why should I be having a fun time when I know back home my mom's like breaking her back just to pay rent? So I digress a little bit, but yeah, overall, just believe in yourself, apply to everything and anything, take the opportunity because you're the first to do it. And it'd be a shame if you were the last to do it. So I'll leave off on that.
That already brought so many questions to my brain. Dang, Ivan, that was cool. And then Cindy, same question goes to you as well. What other challenges and obstacles have you had to overcome as you were pursuing your degree and in your current career? And what strategies and resources did you use to overcome them?
Yeah, so for me, the biggest challenge throughout all my years was, like I had mentioned before, a little bit about like I wasn't sure of my major. And I had even gone to the point where I switched out and I had applied for another major. And it was just like a little bit about imposter syndrome and like feeling like I can't do this, it's not meant for me. And then I was even like, I'd failed a class, I was struggling in some CS classes, and up to the point where I was so in my major that I felt like I should be getting it by now. So that brought me like very confused, and I didn't know what major I would switch into. I didn't really know who to talk to. I remember my classes, they were very big. They were like, what's the word? Like large hall classes. Forgot the word, lecture halls. So it was like really hard to see people, to like make friends. Like it's really hard also when no one looks like you. And I was joining clubs, I was joining soles, and there was not that many, within the club, there was not that many Latinos in software engineering. So it was difficult to even just find someone that I could speak to. And for me, MEP, I had a mentor, I had a peer advisor. Her name was New, and she was a computer science student. So she was kind of like my big sister throughout my entire college experience. And that's also what motivated me to be so involved in MEP. So she gave me that guidance. She told me to join SWE. She told me to join like other clubs on campus, like robotics or something, where I would be able to use my major a little bit more to see if this is really what I want to do. She helped me with internships. And once I was able to get an internship and see what I could do with my degree, see that, okay, someone else believed in me to be able to give me this job, I can do this. That gave me like a little boost of confidence, and that still made me feel more certain in my major. And whenever I would question it a little bit, I thought, okay, maybe I'm just questioning it because I'm getting a bad grade, not because I don't like it. So that's like what I struggled with a lot. And I feel like I still struggled with that until the very end, to like getting my degree. I was like 100% sure of it. So
Thank you guys so much. Our next question is more about finding a job and interviews and the hiring processes. So Iriana, we're gonna start with you again. How do you advise other first generational professionals and on how to navigate the interview and hiring process?
Yeah, so I would say in my experience, like I mentioned earlier, I graduated spring 2020, so 2020 mid quarantine. That summer was extremely difficult because I would apply, I would not hear back. Um, it was very discouraging. But even if you get rejected, I would say never stop applying. You never know um, if someone sees something in you. And even if you get selected and you go into an interview, but then you're not selected to move forward, I would try to look at it as a learning lesson, and this is or a learning opportunity. And this is easier said than done. You know, sometimes like our feelings are hurt, or you really wanted a job and you didn't get it. I always believe that rejection is redirection. There's probably something out there that's waiting or better for you. But even going into an interview and not being selected for it, I would just pay attention to the questions you're being asked. The more experience you have with interviews, the easier they become. I think I've done maybe 10 interviews before I got hired at my job. And by the time that I interviewed for the job that I have now, I felt very comfortable speaking through a camera on a computer because all of my interviews were through Zoom. And I would also you should take notes. I didn't believe in that before going into my interviews. I always thought that it would be kind of weird for me to be taking notes as they're interviewing me, but I actually tried it and it really worked. It helped me articulate my responses better and it helped me in the long run. And not only that, but I kept a Google Doc with questions that different interviews that I've been in that they've asked me. And I've kept those just for reference. And then every single time that I would get called in for an interview, I would kind of just work on what had been asked and how I responded and how I could respond better. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Adriana. Ivan, back to you with the same question.
Cool. So I've actually had the benefit of being on both sides of the interview and hiring process. Currently as a manager, sometimes I act as a hiring manager. So I think the biggest thing that I've taken away from the whole interview and hiring process is that there is no right answer to any of the interview questions people ask. It's really just about finding the right fit. And I think that takes a lot of the pressure off because I think a lot of us want that right answer, right? How many of us have stayed up the night before looking up interview questions for the positions that we're applying to or being interviewed for? So I guess my advice when it comes to the actual interviewing is to be invested in the interview. Just kind of trust yourself because you're a professional. You're coming out of college. The fact that you're here with us right now means that you're probably the type of person that looks and seeks out opportunities to learn more about the environment around you. And you should trust that instinct because that'll get you through the interview process very easily. And I also stress as a hiring manager that has to go through a lot of resumes, cover letters, and LinkedIn accounts. Take the time to structure it well. Add a little color. Don't be afraid of color. Your LinkedIn does matter. So I know a lot of us tend to not think that, but as a hiring manager, if I had to choose between two interview applicants and it was a hard call based on the resumes, I'd look to see which one had a LinkedIn. And if one of them did, I'd probably end up going with that one over the other one, even though both of them were pretty much the same on paper. So if you want to get someone's attention, it really does count when you take the time to build your resume, to build your cover letter, and always write a cover letter, even if it's optional. I appreciate it. I don't know if everyone else does, but I for sure appreciate it as a manager because I'm like, oh, this gives me a view into your personality, who you are. And you kind of set the bar high for other applicants. But yeah, I'm willing to talk more about that in the Q&A if you guys are interested in that aspect.
Thank you so much. Cindy, same question to you.
Yeah, so the advice I would give is to apply to anything and everything that you are interested in. especially if you think that you don't meet all the requirements, it doesn't matter, just apply. Like, don't be that person to limit yourself. There was even some cases where I've like told people, make sure that you apply even if you don't think that you qualify, because these people, that's what their job is. They're the ones to decide yes or no. You shouldn't be the one to decide that for yourself. So there's I'm pretty sure there's even like research that like they've looked into how like minorities are the ones to least apply for jobs because they feel like they need to meet all the requirements. So just apply because you never know. And like how they've mentioned, it's even just a learning experience if you don't get the job. So just be applying. Just for reference, I remember one, I think it was like my sophomore year or my junior year, I was applying to so many internships. I made a Google Sheet with all the internships that I applied to, and it was like 80 internships. And out of all of those, I heard back from half of them. And then out of the ones I heard back, most of them were just no, thanks for applying, no. But out of the ones that did, probably 15 gave me an interview, and then I got 2. So out of the 80, I got 2 offers out of the 80 internships that I applied to. So that kind of just proves to you like how much work it could go into it. And maybe you're fine with just applying one and you get the one, and that's awesome. But it does put a lot of, you do have to put a lot of work into it, and don't be that one to just limit yourself back. As opposed to, I mean, also with the actual like interview itself, I would say make sure you're asking questions in the end. I feel like I've got a lot of praise for that in doing interviews when I actually ask a question in the end, because that's what sets you apart from another candidate that just did really well, but maybe they didn't ask a question. So, and if you do, that makes you sound and appear to be more interested in the company. So I would always ask questions and make sure you're prepared for those common behavioral questions like, tell me about yourself, what are your biggest challenges, your biggest strengths. Those questions are always the same, almost the same questions. They always appear. So there really should be no excuse to not know them. Just have like a Google Doc where you have those common questions, as Iriana mentioned. So it's like really important to just be prepared for those questions, since those are the common ones, and set yourself up for success. Don't be in the interview and be caught off guard by a common question. You don't want to have that happen. So just be prepared.
Thank you so much. All right. The next question will be more about finances. So to Iriana, the question is, how did you navigate through any financial changes and benefits once you graduated from college and now you're transitioning into a professional and everything?
Yeah, so my job currently offers a lot of financial benefits. They have like 401ks, 403 somethings. I still don't know what exactly they're telling me. But when it was being explained to me, when I was first getting hired by HR, they were explaining to me all of these benefits, medical benefits, life insurance. There was a lot that's being thrown at me. And so I unfortunately was not prepared for that. It's not something that, I really got to learn about. And so I had to do a lot of my own research. I even asked additional questions when they were explaining all of my benefits to me and what I could offer, or what they're offering and what I could pick. I even asked if we could meet at a later time so I could do my research, so I could really, really figure out what's best for me and what I want to do. So that's how I've been managing my financial changes. I'm currently also in a spot where I am getting paid more. I am getting paid a lot more than what I worked part-time as a student, which is really nice. And for me, at least right now, I've been having to save all that money because I do plan on pursuing my master's next fall. And so that's like another thing too, where scholarships and financial aid will have to come in for that program, but that's what it's looking like right now post-grad.
Thank you so much, Adriana. And then Ivan, same question to you.
So for me, it's been kind of crazy because same experience with benefits. Like they just kind of threw them at me and I was like, oh, I get to go to the hospital now. Kind of cool. So yeah, stuff like that where it's like, oh, I don't know what, I to this day, I still forget what the different types of insurances are that my company affords me. And then like weird benefits like life insurance that I was like, oh, you mean my family will get paid if I if I die and I won't leave them with debt, that's crazy. So it's a lot of that. And it's really weird too, because like I'm the first in my family to have a managerial position, right? Everyone in my family is working class, at least the ones that are here in the US. And it's kind of like, I asked them things like, oh, so like, do you know what a Roth IRA is? And they're like, who's that? I'm just like, it's like a thing with money. I don't know. I was hoping you'd know. And they're just like, no, I don't have no idea what you're talking about. So, you know, very common first gen experience, I think. So I've relied a lot on research and like even asking like my previous supervisors and bosses, just kind of like, so I have no idea what this is. Do you know what this benefit package is? Do you think it's good for me? Because I don't trust the government or, you know, anyone that tells me I can have free money because of who I am. So yeah, it's a lot of research. I would definitely give the advice of like, you're going to end up doing a lot more research out of school than you ever did in school when it comes to your financial changes and benefits. And also don't be ashamed of earning more than anyone in your family ever has, because that's something that I came up on where it was like, oh, I'm actually afraid of success because no one in my family has reached this level of success before. And that's okay. It's new. It's going to be a little scary. So yeah, I'll leave off on that.
All right, Cindy, I'll have you wrap up this question before we transition to the last question.
So this question is very surreal to me because I'm actually going through that right now. And I just started my job a few weeks ago. So like benefits are just like rolling in and I'm still navigating through it. It's like it's difficult and different to see how you're like a full-time student and now you're transitioning to a full-time engineer. So you're getting all these benefits. Yeah, like life insurance. I'm like, okay, Roth IRA, I still don't know what that is. But it's nice to see that we all had that same initial thought. And I'm actually just like looking it up too as well, like just researching. And I would definitely ask HR at the company if they even have any resources for you. I know specifically for Nike, we can talk to financial advisors, which is really nice because they're able to explain to you what these things are. So you have to like make appointments with them and we can know what 401k is, what are the stock benefits that we have, do we get stocks, we have to purchase them. So it's really nice to get a sense of that because that's not something that we're taught in school and that's not something that our parents most likely been able to teach us. So it's something that like we have to do on ourselves by ourselves. So it's kind of comforting to see that we were all there with that initial thought. But yes, I'd say my advice would just be to look into it or research. And if you could talk to anyone in the company, that would be really great.
Thank you guys. And this is the very last question before we transition into Q&A. So just as a final question, just kind of leave that mark for the panel. What advice would you give to your past self or someone who is interested in pursuing a similar career path? And we'll start with Iriana again.
Yeah, so I would just say do what makes you happy. As I mentioned, I was in a position where I kind of just picked a major on the fly. It looked interesting. You can make a lot of money if you work in advertising and marketing, but I would say do what makes you happy. Explore all your interests. I know that after I took my sociology 1 class for general ed, I was like, I am in the wrong major. And if I would have taken that sociology class, or if I would have even explored that earlier when I was in high school, I probably would have picked a different major. But I mean, everything happens for a reason. I know that I wanted to pursue education, so I stuck with it, even though I was in the wrong major, quote unquote. It's never too late to change. I know that there's a lot of stigma where like you have to finish in 4. You don't have to. My dad is 50 years old and he's going to community college the first time in his life. So, and he's super excited. So it's never too late. I have that example. It's never too late. And step out of your comfort zone and don't be afraid of changes. I know that being first gen and coming to like a 4-year or even transferring from a community college over to a 4-year can be really difficult because there's so many changes that we're just not used to. And so I always remember like comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing ever grows there. So know that if you are feeling uncomfortable or if there's something that is, challenging you for the better, know that it's a good thing because you're going to grow from it.
All right. And Ivan, same question to you. What advice would you give to your past self or someone interested in pursuing a similar career path?
I would agree with a lot of the things that have been said already. It's don't be afraid or ashamed to change your path. The way I look at it is 4 years might seem like a short time, but you're going to be a completely different person by the end of those 4 years. Or like myself, community college, and then a 4-year university, I took a longer path when it came down to it. And the other piece of advice is if you just don't know what career or path you want to go into, volunteer, intern, cold call, do what you have to do to get to know the people that might have like that career choice that you're interested in, just to talk to them, see what they're like, see if you even like them specifically, because, a lot of things that they don't mention when we're choosing our careers is the environments that we're in, right? Do we really want to be in an environment that's hostile towards us? Or do we want to be in an environment that's hostile so we can change it? So yeah, again, just volunteer at places, call them, email them, DM them, do what you got to do to get to know the people that are going to be the people you're working with in the future. And yeah.
Thank you, Ivan. And Cindy, same question to you. What advice would you give your past self or someone interested in pursuing a similar career path as you?
Yeah, I also agree with all the other ones, especially like you don't grow when you're comfortable. So yes, get out of your comfort zone, even that's just joining a club or asking a question in class, even that's already like out of your comfort zone sometimes because you're afraid of asking the dumb question, even though it's not. So just little things like that, like put yourself out there. I would say for me, networking is key. I would not be where I am today if I wasn't networking. And even that's just talking to people in your class, getting to know your other peers can really help you in your classes, can help you network with other students and know that. And as well as professionals, they can help you get a job. So networking is key. I remember the previous MEP director before Matt, she told me some really good advice because I was always told that, when you apply to a job, it's not really like applying, but it helps you when you know people, like it's who you know. And I remember she told me that it's not who you know, but it's who knows you. So that helped me constantly remind myself, I need to put myself out there because it doesn't matter if I know all of these people, they have to know me. They have to think about me when they are planning an event. They think about me when they are trying to fill a spot. So you want to be that person that people think about. So network, and network.
Thank you to the three of our panelists for answering all of these questions and giving such insightful and thoughtful responses. I'm pretty sure the audience already appreciates it. So now we're going to switch gears and transition to Q&A. And we already have one question. And again, for the panelists, this is very informal. Please feel free to unmute your mic and hop on if you feel like you want to contribute. So the first question from our audience is, what would you recommend to students to do if they're unsure about the current major that they're in? And I know we touched on this a little bit throughout the panel as well. So feel free to unmute your mic and share your thoughts about this question.
If you're unsure about the major and you're already in, everyone here is already in SJSU. I would say most majors have some kind of club associated with them. Go to those clubs, meet those students because they're all probably a little bit more ahead within those majors. Talk to them, talk to why they chose their major, what made them go into it. Even if you want to seek out the advisors within each major, because each major still has an advisor, I assume. I hope higher education hasn't changed too much. There's also advisors at EOP, TRIO, and other programs on campus that can help you with those types of things. And if you're like me, you can just say, well, I'm gonna just do this thing and see how that works out. Because a lot of the time you find your way. I think a lot of the fear comes from that self-expectation that we put on ourselves, especially as first gens, to kind of know what we're supposed to do. because most of the time we're the people that our own family members come to, right? Where they'll be asking us to translate things for them, to understand information that's kind of above their head. So we develop that expectation of ourselves to kind of, well, I have to know, you know, but you don't. It's okay. Like, and you're in a place where they've let it be okay for you not to know and for you to explore. So just get out there and explore would be my advice.
I would say, I know this is probably told everywhere, but go to the Career Center. I went to the Career Center a couple times when I was in my undergrad. I took my professional headshots there. I also had resume. I had someone look at my resume. And that resume that was looked over at the Career Center is the one that I use to this day. I change a little bit here and there, but the format that I got from the resume edits, that's the same one I use to this day, and that happened 3 years ago when I got that edited. And they also have other things there too. So definitely check out the Career Center. I know it's plastered everywhere, but they do definitely help.
And I would also add on to that, talk to anyone that you can, whether it's on your LinkedIn network or the Career Center network, clubs, EOP, MEP, that has majored in what you're currently majoring, and see what they're doing with their career path, because there's obviously everyone takes it a different way. So just see what they're doing at the company. What are they studied software engineering, but maybe they're doing like some data research. Maybe they're a software engineer and working on an app. Maybe they're in design. So just like understand what are the different paths that you can take in your majors to help you like understand. So it also.
All right, I'll go on to the next Q&A question that's available. So this is in terms of networking and finding mentors. Do you have any tips for the audience in terms of how to effectively and efficiently find mentors that could benefit and help you in your, like, whether you're an undergrad or even in your professional life, and any networking tips overall for the audience, since this is Silicon Valley and everyone tells you to network, right? But everyone tells you to network, but they don't tell you how to network more specifically. So do you have any tips for the audience on how to navigate through networking and just finding mentors overall?
So I'll start this one off. So like I had mentioned, I think the Career Center also has like a mentorship program, like one-on-one mentoring. And if you join clubs, if you can be matched, or if you can speak to someone who is an alumni, that would be really helpful. And just message them out, even whether it's an email or on LinkedIn. You could even see if someone went to SJSU on LinkedIn and just message them on LinkedIn. Oh, I saw that you went to SJSU, you're majoring in this, or you majored in this, and I'm currently in that, and I'm interested. If I could have like an informative interview, if I could kind of ask you some questions, deciding like if I want to be in this major or just trying to like be in my career more. So ask them questions about really where they took their career, how did they get to where they are now. And I always ask whenever I have a conversation like this, I always ask if they know someone that I could speak to. So it kind of keeps going. So you still have your you kind of just put in that initial work first to speak to someone, and then after they can find someone for you, and then that person will find someone for you. So it will just be a chain. So I think that really helps if you ask that.
I would say even networking professionally, but I would say also networking with your peers as well. I know that like I would go to like EOP events that were not necessarily related to career, they weren't career oriented. It was just having fun. And in all the other positions that I held, I definitely try to get to know my peers, because again, they may know someone, just like Cindy said, they may know someone who knows someone who knows someone, and it's just a chain reaction. So it doesn't always have to necessarily be like all career focused. It can also be just like getting to know someone, and you know, if you find them pleasant or vice versa, you never know where that could could go in terms of then transitioning into like career oriented type of networking.
Yeah, just to add on to it, I'd probably also talk to your professors because they're in the major, right? If you already have a declared major, go to the ones that are in that major, ask them, because a lot of the time they are totally open to students talking to them, which is crazy because I'm like, you guys have so much to do. I don't know why you want to talk to little old me. And yeah, and sometimes through them, like they've said too, you'll find a network because they didn't get to be professors by themselves. Or even like people in EOP and TRIO, it's kind of like, yeah, these people didn't just magically appear in their positions. They all got there somehow. And they at least know one person, you know? So always ask when you're talking to a professor and advisor, like, hey, is there anyone that you might recommend me talking to? Because I'm kind of looking for a mentor right now because I'm a little lost. And, you know, sometimes they'll choose you or you'll choose them. I personally chose Angelica, even though she claims she chose me. So yeah.
Thank you all. And then the next question is, it's a little bit of a thoughtful one. So I would understand if you need a minute to think about it, but whenever it comes to being first gen, it's always difficult when it involves family. So how did you navigate conversations with your family or friends when they had different ideas about what you should be doing with your major and what you should be doing with your career? And I apologize for the mic noise in the back. My grandma is making food. So I'll go on mute now.
Sorry, could you repeat that question? I didn't quite get it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. How did you navigate conversations with your family and friends when they had different ideas about what you should be doing with your major and what you should be doing with your career?
I definitely did not have this conversation with my family, I'll say that. And it was because my family, they're immigrants, I'm an immigrant, and they don't really know what happens post-grad. They don't really know how to be that aide post-grad. My parents just said, you know, get your bachelor's and then you can figure it out. My parents never really had an expectation for me to major in a specific field, to be a lawyer, a doctor, etc. That was never an expectation on me, and I'm extremely blessed. But it's a little funny because my parents did ask me, like, so what do you do now? Like, what is it that you're doing now? Like, and then I try to explain my job to them, and they're like, oh, that's cool. And so, I mean, I've explained to them, you know, I want to get my master's in higher ed and keep moving forward and, you know, be, you know, like a person in community college or 4-year or any institution of color, just represent other people that look like me. And then they're like, oh, that's really nice, you know, but they don't really have an expectation of this is what she should be doing. I believe that my family has, you know, full trust in that what I'm doing is what's best for me.
I guess for me, it's a little bit of both, right? Where I guess being the first gen, it's kind of like your family members are kind of thinking that you know what you're doing because hey, like they're smart, they're the gifted one, right? They're going to be the ones to change things. So I think not so much in expectations of what I should do because they didn't know what was available to me, right? They just know the big names like, oh, doctor, lawyer, you know, engineer. So in that case, I was lucky because they didn't say you should be this, right? Because there was never a precedent for it. But there was the precedent of, well, you're going to college, so that means you're gonna change things. And that's a bit heavy, right? As a first gen, because you're barely figuring it all out. So really the conversations, how I've navigated them or my experiences with them have just been like, you kind of have to trust me. Like I'm gonna go my own way, and that's just kind of how it's gonna have to be because you know, we're in this situation, we might be in it together, but I'm the one taking the steps. So you're just gonna have to trust me, even if I don't know what step I'm gonna take next. And with friends too, right? Because I've lost a few friends that haven't been able to go into higher education, and it becomes a complete like disassociation where you kind of have to come to terms with not everyone's going to understand your experience, even your closest friends sometimes, and that's okay. And you shouldn't be afraid of taking steps to ensure your own success. And if that means sometimes losing someone you thought was a friend, like a real friend would support you in that. So if you ever come to that experience, which I hope you don't, just know that it's okay.
And Cindy, would you like to close out with this question before we start closing up the event?
Yeah, so I also didn't really have this conversation with my parents or with my family actually, because I'm the youngest, and then my two siblings, they did go to college and they got a degree in engineering. So I had like an idea that engineering was like that they wanted me to do engineering, and I feel like I may have had this conversation if I would have studied something that wasn't engineering, but I was interested in engineering, so I didn't really have that question. They more like just didn't really understand, even though they had already two kids who had studied engineering. They didn't really understand what it was, and especially no one in my family had software engineering, so they had that question like what it was, and even up to this day they still don't understand what like that is. So for me, they were just like happy that I got a degree, and they weren't really able to like ask like, okay, what does this mean or anything like that.
All right. Thank you so much to our three amazing panelists for sharing their insight on what it was like to navigate through college and industry so far as a first-gen student. And I really do want to bounce this off and mimic this as much as possible. Like, you don't have all the answers as a first-gen myself. Like, there's no dumb question whether you're asking school or outside of school. There's only room for clarity. I'll just leave it at that. So with that, I'll pass it back to Matt to close off the whole panel.
Thank you, Kathy. And if we can give a virtual round of applause to our amazing panelists today, whether it's our little silent golf claps, I love seeing the hands on the screen. Thank you all, amazing insights. I even saw someone had to leave early and they just said, thank you. This is a reminder to keep their head high. So just wanted to say thank you to you all. As a reminder, this is an event throughout the Diversity Career Week, leading up to our Diversity Career Fair. So if you are able to, we have over 60 employers coming on Thursday, October 7th from 12 to 3. This is just another reminder to definitely register, another chance to again practice all these networking skills that we're hearing today and putting ourselves out there, because that's what we have to do to be able to push ourselves and land these job opportunities. So definitely check out Handshake, join the Diversity Career Fair, and hope to see you there. Lastly, is there one more slide? I think I'm going to pass it over to someone else to remind y'all to fill out the survey. I do believe it's in the chat, but let us know how we did. And then here we go. Is there anything else to close out, folks? Angelica, you want to close one of the Angelicas?
Sure. Again, thank you everybody for joining us today. Please give us feedback. Go ahead and fill out the survey that we are putting the link on the chat, or you can just use the QR code on the screen. And then if you fill out the survey, you will be able to participate in a raffle to win a $50 Amazon card. Once again, thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you to all the panelists for all of your sharing with all of us your experiences and your wisdom. Yeah, that's all. And if you fill out the survey, you are free to go ahead and go continue with your day. Thank you, everybody.
Hey panelists, I see a request in the chat wondering if you folks would be open to connecting with current SJSU students through LinkedIn. Do you all want to drop your links in the chat real quick?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, I have a quick question. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, so about the diversity event, would that be only for people of color, or would we be able to go even if we didn't? Like, I guess.
Great question. For Diversity Career Fair, you're welcome to go. It's open to everybody. Wonderful question, though.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. I just wanted to like make sure so I don't, mess anything up.
No, no worries. Great question. But definitely go. Definitely check it out.